Susan Wood.
Well, that's the third version I've seen of the movie. Can you hear me? Am I doing this right? Uh, I don't know who did the cutting last on this. It moves along beautifully now. And there are scenes of of the America from the first westerns and going through Monument Valley on the road. Um, we had all that. It was beautifully done. Last version didn't have such a good cut. It's been boosted, the color and the accuracy. It's beautiful.
They restored it recently, but they restored it recently. They did a restoration a few years ago. I think the cut is an old cut, but
Whoever did it in favor of Dennis he was on more than Peter, so I think there might have been a fight about that, and I know there were lawsuits and whatnot. But in any event, the time I spent with them was in New Orleans, and prior to that, while they were trying to get a storyboard together, Terry Southern, who was writing with them, had done one, but they were very busy nitpicking and couldn't quite get it over to the producer, Bert Schneider. So when I met them, I was out there on an assignment from Look, and that was exciting enough for me to be sent by the magazine. And I was doing something about the mayor and a swimmer, but I knew Terry Southern, and he gave me the name of the movie to bring to them. They didn't know yet that it was going to be Easy Rider. That was his suggestion. And also, because Dennis had such a wonderful collection of pop art in his house, and I was from an art background, he thought I should see it and connect with him. So he called Dennis, and Dennis expected me, and I called him when I arrived. And when I did arrive, he was just walking out. I was just up there to see the art collection and say, how's it going on the film? How's the script going? And so on. But other than that, I had no knowledge. I had no idea what was going, that they would want me to join their project. And the reason they wanted that is that they said to me, oh, Dennis was being thrown out of his house. When I got up to visit, I'd called. He said, come right up. And he said, well, I'm being thrown out, but let's go down. We've just gotten an office. Peter is waiting for me. We've got to get this storyboard done. And I got down. They were 6s and 7s. And I said, I think I could help you. Why don't you just talk it to me? And maybe we'll get something simple. You really don't. I had seen a lot of storyboards. I had worked in Africa for Howard Hawks and with a John Wayne movie. I had worked on others, and I've seen storyboards. I've seen how things change as you shoot scenes. It's just a suggestion of a location and maybe what's going to go on. So I said, just talk it to me. They started trying to have you a tape recorder. They had a tape recorder. So we started recording. I kept them on course. In a few hours, we had the storyboard that they thought they liked, and it was simplified for them. And I just kept encouraging them to make it simple. But it read very well. And they said, where are we going to get a secretary to type this now? And I said, well, I think you guys talking and speaking of the script is absolutely wonderful. You said Bert Schneider will give you the check so you can get started. Well, take this tape up there and play it for him, and I think you're going to come back with a check. So they sent Dennis, believe me, and they came back with a check. And then they invited me to a few meetings that they were having with people about the project, and they asked me to join the team. Next time I saw them was New Orleans, and it was madness. You know, they were, um, well, in any event, they did get some good footage. Uh, and I got a wonderful story on them and their relationship and them making the movie. And there was
the relationship between Peter,
What?
the relationship between Peter and Dennis, right?
That's right. That relationship was very interesting. Peter had felt somewhat betrayed by Dennis because he told Dennis never to ask him to say anything about his mother's suicide. And the first thing that they were shooting, he got him up into the angel's lap and asked him to talk about his mother. And we didn't hear it, but there was some wonderful material. There's a fourth version to be made of that movie, of more of the cuts, because there were some wonderful scenes with Peter that aren't in this version. But I was thrilled with watching it tonight. I thought it was a real whole movie. And when I left the company, which was right in the middle of New Orleans, just went for an airplane.
Why did you leave? Because you had enough?
Well, I had enough.
Yeah. Well, I think that that New Orleans was also shot in 16. You know, they had to make it for Mardi Gras, so they had specific dates, and they just went in with a 16 mm camera, which is why, you know, the grain is very different. So I'm sure it was very chaotic, right?
Very chaotic, and mostly due to the shortness of time between the time they left Hollywood and got to the location, and of course, the amount of drinking and marijuana and so on. They would ask me about the light, and the light would be good at a certain time, like 10 in the morning, and they didn't get out there till 3 or 4 in the afternoon.
But you know, also Dennis Hopper, beside being an art collector, he was also a photographer. Was this competition between, you know,
Yes.
having you on the set with cameras and?
Everything was fine as long as I was sort of a support system, an emotional support system that would interpret what they thought they wanted to do. But as soon as I was doing my professional thing, being a photographer, I don't think they ever thought about me as a photographer. Dennis was upset. And I really left because he had me try to set up a scene with certain kind of lighting, and it was taking me away from the actual shooting with Peter. And I didn't see there was going to be any. I didn't think there was going to be any break in this. I think he felt that he should be the photographer because he was a very good photographer, but he just had this kind of ego that was self-destructive. But something came out of this. It's really quite a remarkable film.
But did you have a feeling that you were making a historic film, or that something good was going to come out of the?
No, I thought it would never get finished. But it did get finished. Oh, but I think it took 2 years. There's a wonderful autobiography that Peter did that really explains a lot about their relationship and about making this movie. And putting that together with my experience with them, you put the pieces together. They really had a simple idea. It was a road movie, except things in America had turned, you know, all the hopefulness was gone. And we had all of these problems. We had Kent State. We had Martin Luther King being shot. I think that was the bridge in Atlanta. And that they went across. And they... Kennedy was shot all during this period. It was a very bleak time. And I think that's why they chose that ending, because that's what they felt. I was very impressed this time. I thought it had, you know, Dennis was playing one of those outrageous kind of male ego characters, and Peter was this sweet, nice guy. So
To what you were saying before about the cut, I mean, Dennis Hopper originally delivered a 4-hour cut, and they couldn't get out of it. And then, they sent him out of town. I think they sent him to Taos, and Bert Schneider, the producer, sat down and edited down to 90 or so minutes. So there was some intervention there.
I think the story of making the film is should be the next film by someone.
So can you tell us, how did you get into, as a photographer, you photographed interiors, you photograph still life, you photograph writers, how did you start photographing film sets?
Pure accident. I managed to get some jobs from Sports Illustrated. It had just started. And I did Harvard Yale came, and this very energetic shot of the fans. They were almost, you could sense that there was just a great football move, and they were cheering. And it ran in Sports Illustrated, and it the main character in this picture had a cigar in his mouth, and there was a public relations firm called the Cigar Institute, and every time a journalist or a photographer got a picture in a magazine or a publication, the Cigar Institute would send $100, a check for $100. That was impressive. So I mean, this is a long time ago. This is the 70s. So I thought that was so nice that I made a beautiful print of this, large size, about 14 by 17 or 2024. And the president of this publicity concern, Cigar Institute, hung it on his desk hung it over his desk, framed, looking beautiful. And there was a young man named Saul Cooper who moved from that public relations firm to Paramount Pictures publicity department. Howard Hawks was making a movie in Africa. He liked spontaneity, and he liked to see on the sets characters who are the real version of the characters in the movies. So he wanted a woman photographer on location in Africa. And Saul Cooper remembered this picture that hung above the chair of the head of that company. And he remembered the name, or he found it, called me, and within 2 weeks I was in Africa. And not without sort of over the warnings and objections of my father. He said, Hollywood, even on location, even make sure you have a round trip ticket and advance money. And he was so right. I said, oh, Hollywood isn't that way anymore. They're just serious filmmakers. So Howard Hawks had a girlfriend there, and Lisa whatever her name, Lisa Martinelli.
Elsa Martinelli.
Lisa Martinelli had a Willie Rizzo, who was a Parry Match photographer on location, and it became very hard for me to get near a scene.
But so how did you? But you had met John Wayne is the star of the. John Wayne is the star of the picture, and but you had met him before, right? And you said he was nice.
I met him in Mexico. We both somehow were connected to Carlos Urruza, who was a famous bullfighter who fought on a horse, and so he remembered me. We had a very, very nice time. Howard Hawks' girlfriend must have been upset by me because he tried to fire me. And I said, oh, no, Mr. Hawks, I've already been paid. I really feel the obligation to try and get you a story in this Look magazine or whatever it was. And they said, why don't we talk about it later?
So how did you, when you are on a film set, how do you make your way into trying to capture the spirit of the set, the spirit of the film? How hard is it? How different is it from other situations that you photograph?
It's very hard because you really can't take a picture of the scene because the click would be of the camera would be caught by the sound system. So they don't like that. And then you have to try to stay out of the way so that if they do a pan shot across, you're not in the wrong spot and ruin the take. So it's complicated. And then the actors are very tired or they're very they want to just get off the location as soon as the shooting is over. And then there are problems, with Monica Vitti. She had the man she lived with. What is his name?
Michelangelo Antonioni.
Yeah, Antonioni. Yeah, he was in her dressing room. So the director, I think it was Joseph Losey.
Losey. Yeah, the film is Modesty Blaze.
Modesty Blaze, and it was a humorous picture. I don't know whether Antonioni ever made a humorous picture, but anyway, Joe Losey would give her instructions. She said, just a minute, I have to go to my dressing room. She'd go to the dressing room, and then Antonioni would give her other instructions. Come back, nobody was happy. And she was so nervous about it all, she started eating, and she ate her way out of the wardrobe. She got to... So things had to be remade, new clothes, But I had caught her when she was not aware that she was being photographed. And I sent them over to her dressing room to see if she liked what I was doing. And she came back and said, they are the best pictures I ever saw of me. And would you like us to have a special scene? A special setup. I'll get all the costumes and I'll come in and work with you out so we could find a spot around the studio. It was in England. And we did, and she brought water and she put different things on. And they were terrible pictures, and I knew it as I was taking it. She was just, this personality, when she wasn't on camera, was so superb and so exciting. But when, or so tender and sweet. Expression. She had wonderful expression. But as soon as she was posing, dead in the water.
She really did. With Monica Vitti, I was telling Susan the other day, she really captured the mystery. Vitti is a very unusual Italian star. She does, and she has this mystery, and it's in her pictures. And there are some upstairs, and also in the slideshow that it's on the. I really suggest you take a look, and it's very special. And if you have any question, raise your hands because I don't want to monopolize. Yeah, there is one there. Yeah. Hold on for the microphone. Yeah. Yep.
First of all, your work is so beautiful, and these moments that you've captured are really a privilege to see. And there are two things I want to ask you. One, there was a picture of Peter being helped out of a fountain, and he looked so vulnerable in that picture. And I start to think that perhaps that is the real character. Is that true?
It definitely was the real character.
Yeah.
And this is the scene where he is talking. Dennis asked him to talk about his mother. And I think he said something like, I hate you, you left me. And so on, his childhood feelings. And when he got down from the statue, I mean, he was just wiped out.
It shows in your picture. That vulnerable moment, you captured it perfectly.
There's also one where there's a little dog and he's petting it. And I sure that was projection. So, but then he came down and Dennis was gloating. He was so happy that he had gotten that scene. And I got some more. So it's like a little movie of them. Tony, what is Tony's?
Basil.
What?
Tony Basil?
Yes, Tony Basil. How could I forget Basil? Have it every day. But anyway, Tony is sort of taking charge to be comforting and taking him away, and Peter's just just wiped out and miserable. And Dennis is gloating. He's smiling and he's so proud. So there's a series of pictures, and then they go off. And then I have Peter and Tony Basil, with the little outfit that he was wearing with the flag on the back, going off in the. It really is beautiful. It's like a little movie.
So I have one other question, because you passed over the subject of how mad it was on set. You brushed that off as you were describing it a few minutes ago. I wonder if you would go a little more deeply into what you saw that made it so mad. Was it?
It was mostly Dennis and alcohol and drugs and his giving it to his bad angels, his bad temperament.
I see. Thank you so much. That's fascinating. Thank you.
And very, very observant. Thank you for observing my picture, noticing those things.
Any other question? There's one here. Yep.
Hi, just a comment that noticing when they're in New Orleans and they're tripping and they're on the 16 millimeter, which was so grainy, everything was perfect for the fact that Karen Black was obviously having a bad trip. Peter up against a statue and caressing the face of Madonna and everything. I wonder just how many yards of the 16 millimeter film that was cut and left on the floor, and all the things that were not included because it was grainy. It was so powerful, and I would love if you could grab all those yards of that film left on the floor and piece it all together, so that how personally I think it would be an ugly segment putting it all together, but the continuity in that was amazing, and especially like seeing Peter ugly, Karen ugly, Dennis, well, Dennis is wacky, so you never know as far as tripping, but it was a great segment, and I really enjoyed that part.
I agree with you. Well, I think there were a lot of good segments, but there was another cut of it with the marijuana scene. It explains it to
Jack Nicholson?
Jack Nicholson. There's a scene that Peter had done that I thought was brilliant, and that was cut. I don't know why, and it just, he says so little. But that was a longer scene. But and I think that the whorehouse scene, it's better than in the last version. There was a version that was supposed to be shown, or was shown, at Radio City Music Hall. Tasheen was going to do a book. This had all of the musicians and their bands on stage at Radio City Music Hall, and Peter died 3 days before this get together. So there have been, it was cursed.
Yeah. Do you remember the film was photographed by this great Hungarian director of photography, Laszlo Kovacs. Did he also film the New Orleans scenes, or no? He did. Yeah.
They might have gone back because they had a very amateurish filmmaker to start off with, a friend of theirs, and he turned to me to ask what the f-stop might be.
So you were being the gaffer?
What the exposure should be on his movie camera.
Yeah.
And it just was so disorganized that, so I think they went back and they put in that high school band. there is a lot of material that's good material that's on the cutting room floor, and there's a lot of bad material. I don't think you'd want to see all that.
But you really see the Kovacs images because that photographing of the landscape, it's so beautiful. It's like a foreigner discovering America. There is that extra marvel that not everybody has if you grew up with in Monument Valley. So it was a brilliant director of photography. He did a lot of the Peter Bogdanovich film, and he worked with Bob Rafelson, and it was very, very, very good director of photography. One more, if there is. Otherwise, we have to Sabina. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say how enormously influential that film was culturally, visually, also in Europe. I saw it as a kid, as a teenager in Germany, and it had a tremendous influence. But one last question is how was the chemistry between Dennis Hopper, Peter Fonda, and Jack Nicholson? I mean, it's a trivial
Fantastic.
question, but we all want to know.
Well,
probably.
yes,
So-
it was very good. It was very good. But there were flare-ups with Dennis, as there was a flare-up with him and me, where he resented me being a photographer because he was a photographer. As soon as I had the two cameras around my neck, it was like I was the enemy. But
and Jack Nicholson was fairly
well, I
known, right?
I did not. I met Jack Nicholson on other occasions, but I left the company in New Orleans with their first shoot. As it was, I got some remarkable footage, which was those tender scenes with Peter up in the arms, and I got some very good stuff with the two of them. But I did not. I was not there for the bicycle scenes, and they did a lot of very good work after I left. The first version of the scene of the farmers who are having trouble was not as good as the scene here, which I think was shot again with this new photographer.
Yeah, Zaslakovic,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay,
Thank
you've been waiting for one, yeah, and then that's it. That's the last one.
Thank you. I know. I would just wonder. It almost seems to contradict Dennis's way of directing, but I noticed in some scenes, improvising was quite present. To me, almost notably,
What's that?
improvising was quite present. Most notably to me when Jack was having his first drink out of jail. And I just wonder, it seems like Dennis was a very controlling director. How was he in allowing folks to improvise some scenes?
He
Even
wanted that. He wanted that. He wanted improvisation. He admired the films of the Italian, which were improvised. But he would cut. He would say "cut" in Peter Fonda's autobiography. He was very upset. Peter was upset that Dennis would always say "cut" as soon as the language was done, because Peter felt there was still body language as the character would walk away or turn or stop talking. There was still acting to be done that could transmit mood and could transmit so much love, hate, and so on. And Dennis would cut too soon. So I don't think he was sensitive enough, but he did understand. There were a lot of scenes where I didn't see anything of a particular scene with little girls in the cafe, in another cafe, flirting and talking and looking at them. And he often he wanted to have spontaneity, And sometimes he did have it. You know, they wanted that. Howard Hawks wanted spontaneity. He would deliver the film. This is in Africa. He would deliver the script the night before, and it was just the idea of it, and he'd want the actors to just come in and ad lib, which they did. But of course, he had a complicated team there. Everyone was a foreigner who had just learned English for the picture. It's amazing what goes on on film sets.
So you did like film sets.
Well, they were once. If you could get away from them trying to act like they're the military, there was always some assistant producer who wanted, you know, to have control and run it like it's an army. And it is like an army. They make you get up at 6 a.m. and get it on location or whatever. And it's you know, it's but you know, it's, if they could manage to get some spontaneity, it's wonderful.
And with this, I want to thank Susan for being here. And don't miss the show upstairs. It's open until mid-September. So if you don't have time tonight, come another night.